Hi, my name's Jackie Welchman, and I did my paper on how parental addiction affects child development. I included 3 empirical research studies, some statistical information, and a girl's personal account of her struggles throughout childhood because her father was an alcoholic. I want to start with a quote I found because I think it puts things in perspective. In 2007, the National Survey on Drug Use and Health reported that 8.3 million children live with at least one parent who was dependent on or abused to alcohol or illicit drugs in the past year. The first study I looked at used attachment theory to understand the impact of alcoholism on children. The environment of a child whose parent is an addict is one that's uncertain, and that doesn't foster secure attachments. When you enter in a parent who is mood altered, they aren't available to care for their child. They found that those children are at risk for anxiety, depression, trauma, and failure to thrive. They also found that these children begin to question their reality. They may start to wonder, is this normal? Is this sort of life normal? Or if I act better, then they might stop drinking. In the clinical picture, this is a child who has been parentified. And that means that the caregiver is unable to meet developmental needs, and the child is caring for themselves and or siblings sooner than developmentally appropriate. The next study I looked at focused on the quality of relationships between parents and children in an alcoholic and non-alcoholic home. One of the features I really liked about this study was that they used a minimum of 5 years of addiction in the family, which means that these children probably lived in these homes far sooner than they could even talk. So it wasn't something that just was, over a year or happened sporadically. It was something that they had learned to deal with at a very young age. And the children of non-alcoholics and alcoholics shared their experience and reported it as they perceived it and as they witnessed it. What they found in this study was they perceived their parents' behavior as rejecting, indifferent, and neglecting. And those types of relationships impaired interpersonal functioning that can last into adult life. One other thing that I really liked about this study was that they found that non-alcoholic and alcoholic parents in recovery don't differ significantly on parent-child relationship quality, which confirmed their hypothesis that active alcohol consumption was the reason for how they perceived their parents' behavior, which thus resulted in poor interpersonal functioning. Some statistical information I wanted to include as well is that the consequence of alcohol abuse often depletes financial resources and sometimes leave these children homeless, which often also leaves them silent. They're sworn to secrecy. They can't tell anybody where they're living because sometimes they're living in a car, or sometimes they're living with a family member, and so they're not able to talk about things that they so desperately need to talk about. These children often try to control and eliminate their parents' alcohol abuse, and sadly, in this research study, they found that these children are at greater risk for becoming an addict themselves because they learn by watching their parents how to self-medicate, and that becomes their primary tool for dealing with life's struggles. Another study I looked at found a correlation between the bouts of their parents' alcoholism and symptoms that children showed. And it kind of mimicked the ebb and flow of their parents' alcoholism. So as parents' alcoholism or addiction got stronger, their children's externalizing symptoms got stronger. And this research study found the most prominent symptoms that children displayed were anger and aggression. And then periods of extreme abuse, parental substance abuse, mimicked periods of extreme anger and aggression. And then this girl, I found a story. Her name's Alana Levinson, and she is a graduate student in the School of Journalism at the University of California, Berkeley. And I thought I would just read kind of an excerpt that I included in my paper because I think it sums it up beautifully what these research studies have found. And this is what I wrote. Alana Levinson, a student from the University of California, Berkeley, Graduate School of Journalism, writes a beautiful personal account of how she survived the childhood trauma of her parents' drug addiction. She grew to know that she would be waiting for no one to show up, what the smell of cigarettes meant, sound of crashing objects against the wall, and shame at the age of 6. Kindergarten teachers saw her sit quietly and draw figures with arms and legs, but no people. Debilitating anxiety landed her several doctor visits where she was convinced she was dying. Levinson refers to an article she read at a counseling session to explain how she feels about addiction. Levinson quotes, "It's like an elephant, a huge and dominating presence impossible for children to ignore. With denial as her family's primary means for coping, it isn't surprising she didn't trust her own judgment or blame herself when everyone else behaved as if there was no elephant." Levinson's personal struggles with parental addiction confirms the consequences brought on by a life of chaos and instability. She suffered mentally, physically, and emotionally. Now, as an adult, she uses her voice to help those children suffering silently and continues her healing process. And I included her story because I feel that she is one of many who has been resilient in the face of such a challenging time when children are placed in a position where they are most vulnerable and in the home where they're suffering, in the home where their parent is an addict or addicted to drugs or alcohol, they suffer mentally, emotionally, physically, they suffer interpersonal skills. And this is something that they carry into their adult life, and it's a scar that stays with them. So I think if we encourage children to talk more openly about what goes on in their home and educate them more about what resources are available for them, we will see children become more resilient like Alana Levinson. Thank you for listening.